Now, I know quite a lot of you out there think that I speak a lot of bull, and I want to confirm that I will indeed be speaking a lot of bull today. Yes, it's Taurus the bull. There we go. Now, a few years ago, a relative of mine said, "Oh, Taurus are boring." And I didn't say anything. I just snorted, kicked up some sand with my hooves, and thought, you just wait and see. And so that is why I've decided to call this blog Taurus, Popes, Queens, Dictators, Emperors, and Revolutionaries, because it is Taurus who are the people who have shaped modern Western history. So, I often think that while Scorpio, which is the opposite sign to Taurus, is perceived as the revolutionary sign, the kind of radical taboo-breaking sign, I think it is actually Taurus who act out a more extreme version of Scorpio. And I'm going to illustrate that now with some of the examples I've chosen. So we're not going to be talking about the Taurian love of food, how they're easygoing, how they're really stubborn, or how they're good in business. Oh no, 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 no. There is way more to Taurus than that. Now, I talked about extremes. The Taureans run right through the spectrum. There's some extremely good ones and some extremely malevolent ones. So let's start with some positive examples. Queen Elizabeth II of England, our reigning monarch, and the longest reigning monarch in UK history, is a Taurus. I think she epitomizes the tenacity, the determination, and the commitment to her job that is so typical of Taurus. All her adult life she's been the Queen, and right up to now, she's 90 years old. She's still doing engagements and carrying out her role in quite an extraordinary fashion, given her age. In fact, the way she's carried out the role make a lot of people think that what would the royal family be without her? She's the glue that holds what she calls the firm together. She makes this thing work, cannot even survive without her. The power of the Taurus to build on something, to keep it going. Now, the Queen as well, a lot of people in the UK, around the world, don't believe in the monarchy, but very few people criticise the Queen. People have a lot of respect for her. Can many of us even remember a time when she wasn't the Queen? No. Her first Prime Minister was Winston Churchill. Her latest is Theresa May, the second female Prime Minister of the UK. Think of all the changes that have gone on in the world while she's been in power, and yet for the UK, she has been, as our head of state, a symbol of consistency, a constant in an ever-changing world, someone who reliably and doggedly carries on in her role no matter what. Now, the Queen is the Supreme Governor of the Church of England, and another Taurian was the head of the Catholic Church, John Paul II, who was the second longest serving Pope. And unlike the Pope that came after him and just quit, he carried on right up until the bitter end. Even when he was very frail and weak and infirm, he still carried on his duty as the Pope right up until the end. And I think as popes go, he had a lot of pizzazz. He had kind of Pope je ne sais quoi. Now, his native land was Poland, and although it's hard to prove, it is said that he had a great influence in the fall of communism, particularly via the influence he exerted in Poland. So that is quite a thing to be credited with. And incidentally, he was the first pope that ever came to visit the UK, and he was of course greeted by Queen Elizabeth II. Next we have Catherine the Great of Russia, another Taurus, born May the 2nd. Now, under her rule, Russia was revitalized. It went from being a kind of medieval feudal state to becoming a modern European power. Under her influence, it grew larger, many fantastic new cities were built. It was a very exciting time in Russian history. And Russia is also a Taurus country. Now, I'm going to come back to Russia in a little while because it forms a key part of this. But let's go over to Germany, where Karl Marx was born, another Taurian, spent a lot of his life in England. Now, he was a philosopher, an economist, a socialist. He had many ideas as expressed in his books. One of the key tenets of his argument is that governments are run for the benefit of the elite. However, they make out that they're being run for the benefit of the people. And I think, has there ever been a time in history when that particular concept is not being received, appreciated, and acknowledged? I mean, I think he could probably re-release his books with a picture of a well-known woman who's been in the news quite a lot recently on the front of it. But I never would have thought myself a Marxist, but I can see that that concept is alive and well. Marxism still exists in various forms: cultural Marxism, economic, social. He was really an influential thinker, and he inspired another Taurus, Vladimir Lenin, who was one of the members of the Bolsheviks. He became the first leader of Russia after the revolution and the first leader of the Soviet Union. And under his influence, communism became a thing, became a concept, it grew. And so here we have another Taurus who has influenced the whole destiny of the entire Eurasian area and Eastern Europe, also China. He influenced that whole region. It was under communism for many years until the fall of the Berlin Wall, and it defined most of our time growing up, like with the Cold War and everything like that. So, who should we look at next? Well, unfortunately, I have to tell you that Adolf Hitler was Taurus. You probably already knew that. So apart from the obvious, let's think about the influence that he had. After World War II, we had the Iron Curtain. Europe was effectively divided. It defined the lives of everyone that was born right up until the 80s when the wall fell. The United Nations was formed, and the 5 permanent members of the UN who still have the veto power are Russia, China, the UK, France, and which one did I miss out? The UK, France, Russia, China. Never mind, I'll come back to it. But they are still the 5 permanent members, and they still have an influence, and that stems back to World War II. After World War II, they started up the idea of the European Union, and one of the ideas of that was to prevent this whole war breaking out in Europe again. So we see the ramifications coming forward to today. What about the State of Israel, who the impetus for it actually being formed was World War II? And Israel is also a Taurus country. So let's look over at the United Kingdom. Oliver Cromwell, a very controversial leader in the UK history, was also Taurus. Winston Churchill called him a military dictator. Other people have called him a regicidal dictator, whereas other commentators think he was a force for good, a force for liberty and freedom. He lived in relative obscurity until he was 40 years old, when he became part of the Roundheads during the English Civil War. He rose to power, he became the Prime Minister of the UK, and he is listed today as one of the in the top 10 greatest Britons of all time. He's called regicidal because his is one of the signatures on the death warrant for Charles II. So he had a very big influence on United Kingdom history, absolutely hated in Ireland, where he was seen as a dictator, really. On that theme of dictators, we're going to look at the next 2 people. Saddam Hussein, a Taurus. Tony Blair. Now, I'm not saying Tony Blair is a dictator, but his name will forever be associated with the other Taurian, Saddam Hussein, and his WMD. So, of course, Saddam, you know, very powerful leader in Iraq for many years. Hosni Mubarak of Egypt, also a Taurus, and one of the dictators in Tunisia, Ben Ali, also a Taurus. Pol Pot, who ran the dreadful regime in Cambodia, was a Taurus. So you see, Taureans can have a very big influence over the countries that they run, and incidentally, Iraq is another Taurus country. On a slightly more positive note, Eva Peron, who came up through the unions and was a strong advocate for workers' rights and also women's rights, and was the Prime Minister of Argentina, another Taurian. So as you can see from all these people that I'm talking about, it's quite amazing the influence Taurians have had. Then we go across to Japan, another Taurus country. Emperor Hirohito, which is the second longest serving emperor of Japan, also a Taurus. Catherine de' Medici, from the French aristocracy, was known as the most powerful woman in 16th century Europe. So there I give it to you, all these Taurians having a massive effect on modern world history. Now there's one Taurian that I want to end off with, because he is currently still being very influential, and that's David Icke. I think he's a new kind of revolutionary. He's a conspiracy theorist, he's also a truth activist. I know he's busy right now with what he calls his worldwide wake-up call tour, going around the world just encouraging people to question everything and to see government, leadership, world affairs, the media in a totally different way. I think in his way he's a revolutionary. I think he has been at the heart of a whole movement we see at the moment right around the world. I think it was epitomized in Brexit. I think Donald Trump is tapping into that. All over the world, people are questioning now. The corporate media are struggling against the indie media because people are looking for a different kind of information. I know that loads of people out there are also into conspiracy theories. There's a mistrustfulness of the way history has been related to us. Right throughout history, you know, the people who won the war were the ones who told the story, who wrote the history books, who passed on that story. But now it's different, because with the internet we can exchange ideas and we can see things that may be a little bit different to how they were packaged and sold to us. So there you go, from revolutionaries back 400 years ago to a modern day revolutionary who I feel is having a very big impact on thinking and leading a whole movement right now into alternative thought and truth activism, who is David Icke. So there you go. I think I've totally proved to you that Taurus are anything but boring. They can be a little bit extreme, but they can be extremely influential. So if you are a Taurus, just be reminded as I go through all this about what you could accomplish if you put your mind to it, because look at what these Taureans have accomplished. Some of them for bad, but you can make sure you accomplish for good. So if you want to know more, I have this book out. It's called Taurus, Your Day, Your Decan, Your Sign. So it's much more than just about Taurus. I've broken it down to your decan, because each sign has first, second and third decan. Then I've broken it down into the day, so I give you a specific reading for every day of Taurus. And lots of interesting information, and I've also gone over those particular famous Taureans in this book. And if you're interested, that is my 2017 Taurian horoscopes book, out now on Amazon, Barnes & Noble and Waterstones. I am eager to do personal chart readings for anyone. It's best to contact me on my Facebook page, because sometimes the comments get kind of lost, or sometimes there can be so many of them that I can't keep track. I am a little bit snowed under now trying to finish my book, so I'm right down to Libra, which I hope to have finished later today. So please get in touch and I definitely will reply to you and we'll organize something. So thanks to all you Taurians and to everyone who watched, and don't let them call you boring.